Nigeria's COVID-19 cases continue to rise as Lagos remains the epicenter. Federal government advances culture of virtual meetings. In international news, hundreds missing, feared dead in China flooding. And in sport, African Table Tennis Federation postpones two major championship events.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Cases of the new coronavirus in the country have continued to rise. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control and CDC announced 463 new infections on Tuesday. Lagos, as usual, had the highest number of infections, 128, followed by Kwara with 92 new cases. With those figures, Nigeria's total COVID-19 tally now stands at 33,616. And the CDC says 13,792 patients have been discharged, while nearly 1,800 have died as a result of the disease. Lagos State continues to bear the brunt of the burden, as yesterday's figures raised the total number of cases in the state to 12,711. As the lockdown on places of worship and crowd gatherings stays in effect, the federal government has asked Nigerians to fully embrace the culture of virtual meetings. Secretary to the government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, made the call during Monday's briefing of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. Mustafa said once meeting participants exceed 4 persons, government officers should revert to virtual meetings. He also said reopening of domestic flights should not be misconstrued. He said unnecessary travels should be suspended. The secretary to the government also urged places of worship and politicians to diligently observe the guidelines in public gatherings. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected so many economies around the world. Nigeria is not an exception. But even in the midst of this pandemic, some sectors are actually doing well. As correspondent Kelechi Mekalam tells us, the logistics industry is actually booming.
This dough factory is one of the favorite spots for pizza and pastry lovers in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. But for over 3 months now, it's been closed to on-site services due to the coronavirus pandemic. It takes customers' orders for delivery only, and engaging a logistics firm has become a viable option.
Logistics business have really helped this business, and they have everybody, and it made the business more easier. People do sit at their home and make the order, and it will deliver to their doorstep. And I can tell you that he also increased his sale, and it's more better than ever before. And we feel like we don't have a challenge over that.
The government has implemented several strategies to halt the spread of COVID-19 in Nigeria, from a nationwide lockdown to wearing of masks in public places, applying hand sanitizers, and washing of hands. Now many consumers have shifted their attention to online digital trade channels. This has increased the demand for logistics services, leading to a boom in the sector. Logistics operators like Sulaiman Abubakar are reaping the benefits and creating more job opportunities.
We ventured into the logistics, where we do the day-to-day deliveries with bikes, and we also have trucks and buses for all kinds of deliveries, all kinds of logistics. We've been able to get more people on board. We've been able to employ over 80 people just for the bikes, and it's a good thing.
All this while I be at home, my families are not comfortable well. They are not feeding, they are not doing just okay, let me just join the Sanford. And since I joined the Sanford, we render our service.
The value of Nigeria's logistics industry has grown over the years. From $649 million in 2018, it has nearly doubled since the coronavirus outbreak. But how much impact can that have on Nigeria's ailing economy?
It will not still be enough to be able to change the economic outlook of the country until the time we are able to grow it sufficiently and is able to have a significant impact on our economy.
The Nigeria Bureau of Statistics reports that 42% of Nigerians have lost their livelihoods due to the coronavirus pandemic, and some 39 million others are projected to be unemployed by December this year. While the logistics sector booms, many are hoping for a diversification effort to other sectors that will create more job opportunities this period.
Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Adeniyi Adebayo, has announced the federal government is set to unveil a 65 billion naira stimulus package for the organized private sector in the country. The minister says this would boost the economy and soften the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. The minister made the announcement during a virtual meeting with members of the organized private sector that comprises the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, and the Nigerian Association of Small-Scale Industries. NASIMA Director General Ambassador Ayola Olukoni said in a statement the federal government has assured the sector of its support and has vowed to work closely with the private sector in a bid to revamp the economy in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Nigeria's main source of revenue is oil, the price of which has dipped considerably in recent times. This considerable plunge in prices has almost brought the fuel industry to its knees. And now the coronavirus pandemic has produced added pain in the economy. In the face of the turmoil, Nigeria has had to weaken the naira. Correspondent Deji Badmus has the story.
We believe that we will be able, and we are saying that we should continue to sustain the existing FX, foreign exchange management and stability that we've seen in the market. There's no need for anybody to ever think that an adjustment would happen.
That was back in January when the price of oil was at about $70 per barrel and the country's reserve was almost hitting $40 billion. Fast forward to July and circumstances have forced the central bank governor to swallow his words. With the global price of oil tumbling and the COVID-19 pandemic decimating the economy of Africa's largest oil producer, virtually every analyst says the valuation of its currency was inevitable. Added to all of this is pressure from the World Bank and the IMF to have a floating exchange rate.
What we need more than anything now is to stop exporting our crude and arrange to refine everything that we produce internally. When we do that, rather than spending the paltry reserve that we have importing what we produce, we will now be exporting refined products and be earning hard currency from that.
The central bank says the latest devaluation would help unify the multiple exchange rates in the country and create transparency and stability in the FX market, something investors have long campaigned for. With the country importing so much for domestic consumption like petrol, the devaluation is suspected to lead to an uptick in inflation. The government's FX commitment like foreign debt servicing will also shoot up. There's a sweet side despite the devaluation.
That will incentivize foreign portfolio investors to resume their patronage of Nigerian local currency instruments. And that should lead to a boost in foreign capital inflow and help stabilize the exchange rate. In addition to that, for the 3 tiers of government that get the allocations in Naira, that will help moderate the decline in the earnings or the receipts of the 3 tiers of government.
The devaluation has resulted in some level of convergence of the multiple exchange rates. It remains to be seen if the convergence will persist until there's a single rate for every segment of the FX market in the country.
Coming up, African news. 10-day COVID-19 lockdown reimposed in northern Algeria. And later, international news. Hundreds missing, feared dead in China flooding.
You are watching ANN.
See you tomorrow, Papa. I am happy and I know I'm free.
Now time for meeting. Any landlord when no show go pay fine.
Make I go call her.
House number 1. Present.
Papa, they don't start meeting you.
House number 5.
And you're angry that you're not here.
Just put me on the window there so that I can see them and I can hear them. He's not around, so his house is sanctioned. Present. I carry data for head, I carry him for back. Correct data when no dey peme. Say I know they know me, say I know they see your landlord. Talk to me face to face.
Explore without limits. Turn it up on MTN, the reliable data network.
Driver, fire ahead.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has reimposed a ban on the sale of alcohol and a nighttime curfew to reduce pressure in its hospitals. As coronavirus infections rise in the country had put in place one of the strictest lockdowns in the world in March, but has since eased many restrictions so it would not further damage its struggling economy. Respondent Yulisa Injamela reports.
The COVID-19 storm has arrived in South Africa, and that's according to President Cyril Ramaphosa. In a televised national address, the president sounded the alarm, saying the country is now expecting a wave of infections. Ramaphosa announced a reintroduction of some restrictions. These include the immediate suspension of the sale, purchase, and distribution of alcohol. While most South Africans have taken steps to limit the spread of the coronavirus, President Ramaphosa reprimanded others for not adhering to lockdown regulations, saying many people are ignoring safety guidelines. This, he says, is extremely worrying. Other restrictions announced by the president include a curfew between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m. Wearing cloth masks in all public spaces will now be mandatory and enforceable by law to limit the spread of the coronavirus. Building owners are now legally obliged to require people to wear face masks. The president says health experts have warned that at the rate that the cases are increasing, South Africa is likely to hit 50,000 deaths this year. Governance, like all other sectors of society, has also been affected by the outbreak, with 3 of the country's 9 premiers testing positive for COVID-19. The president further warned South Africans that the main challenges lie ahead. The president also revealed that more health personnel will be recruited. These include additional nurses, doctors, and emergency health personnel. He, however, stressed that the citizens have all the power to ensure that this virus does not spread by simply adhering to the regulations.
Authorities in the northern Algerian province of Tipasa have reimposed a 10-day lockdown on the 10 major counties in the province as COVID-19 worsens there. The lockdown is designed to strengthen preventive measures against the spread of the coronavirus. The Tipasa Police Department is already mobilized to track violators and impose harsh fines. Many in the districts have been found to be unaware and apathetic about the measures, and permanent checkpoints have been reimposed. The seashores of Tipasa's eastern region are being patrolled by law enforcement teams to maintain strict implementation of the lockdown procedures to prevent swimming and crowds. Zimbabwe President Emmerson Mnangagwa has launched a national anti-corruption strategy amid calls for the strengthening of mechanisms to fight corruption on the continent. In a keynote speech making the 4th edition of the African Anti-Corruption Day, Mnangagwa acknowledged the impact of corruption on African economies and the need to build strong institutions to fight it. Janet Mungyaka of Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation has the story.
This year marks the 4th edition of the African Anti-Corruption Day amid calls for the strengthening of mechanisms to fight corruption on the continent. It is in this spirit that Zimbabwe has this Saturday launched a national anti-corruption strategy with President Emmerson Mnangagwa giving a keynote address. The head of state acknowledged the impact of corruption on African economies and how the vice is complex and corrosive, hence the need to build strong institutions to fight corruption.
Corruption is one of the continent's greatest threats with negative and corrosive effects which hamper and reverse economic development, progress and stability.
To this end, Comrade Mnangagwa called for the swift enactment of the independent complaints mechanism and legislation that protects whistleblowers, while members of the criminal justice system were challenged to improve on investigations and prosecution of corruption cases.
Enactment of the independent complaints mechanism, as outlined in Section 210 of our national constitution, must be expedited. There is ample evidence of my administration's resolve to crack down on corruption and to improve work practices across the public sector towards enhancing accountability and transparency. To complement these efforts, an active, involved and empowered citizenry with the appropriate values and practices which are averse to corruption is of paramount importance. Members of the criminal justice system and those in institutions tasked to fight corruption must improve on the investigation into and the prosecution of corruption cases. They must be above reproach and must ensure that all cases of corruption within their rank and file are thoroughly investigated, with corrupt officials punished. The culture of long drawn-out prosecutions and the catch and release syndrome must come to an end. The arrest and successful prosecution of corrupt, big and small fish alike must be the new normal.
The president also noted the role of media in the fight against corruption and how the development of the anti-corruption strategy has been inclusive. Janet Munyaka, ZBC News, Harare.
When we return, international news. Hundreds missing, feared dead in China flooding. Later, sports. African Table Tennis Federation postpones 2 major championship events.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. More than 100 persons are missing or perhaps dead, and nearly 38 million have been evacuated since June when flood alerts were triggered for 433 rivers in China. Torrential rains that typically hit in July and August started in the middle of last month. Economic losses in 13 provinces had reached $3.5 billion at the end of June. Now, China's authorities say it has beefed up emergency response teams.
China's Ministry of Water Resources raised the national flood response level to the second highest on Sunday, as southern and central China have been hit by heavy flooding since June. Nearly 38 million people in 27 provinces have been affected, with 140 dead or missing.
6月以来，西南地区到长江中下游地区
More than 400 rivers across China have reported extreme water levels, with some at historic highs. Many torrential geological disasters have occurred in southwest China since June.
President Xi Jinping has called for the greatest efforts to ensure the safety of people's lives and property. The ongoing challenges of flooding and COVID-19 have pushed China's disaster relief and emergency management systems to the edge. Officials say the focus going forward should be on flood prevention.
China is entering a key period of flood prevention. We have dispatched 47,000 people for prevention, rescue, and relief work. 76,000 people have been rescued and evacuated so far.
Flood control stations near the Yangtze River and Taihu Lake have been called into action. Officials predict that heavy rainfall and flooding will also occur in China's northern river regions. They say effective measures in monitoring and giving out early warnings should be implemented for northern China.
Over here, we're in the Indian black market sells for nearly 10 its market price because of the demand for the drug. It is set to cut the duration of COVID symptoms from 15 days to 11 days around the world. India has beefed up efforts to clamp down on the black market for the antiviral drug.
Dr. Rohit Sharma has gone through hell in the last few days. He had to run from pillar to post looking for remdesivir. This drug could save his father's life, who is battling in the intensive care unit with COVID.
Since I am from the medical industry, I could find the medicine with the help of my contacts, but I still had to pay a huge amount for the medicine.
As the COVID cases rise in the country, the demand for the drug is increasing. More doctors are prescribing it. This has led to a huge gap between the demand and supply, leaving room for black marketing.
The medicine companies are supplying the drug directly to the hospitals, and there are loopholes everywhere. The leakage is from the hospitals, especially when there is a shortage of a drug. There are chances of black marketing.
After receiving several complaints, the Drug Regulator of India has asked the companies manufacturing and selling this medicine to put in place a helpline number to help the patients. Although the companies have denied allegations of any leakage, they are boosting up production to meet the demand. They hope that by the end of this month, the situation will be under control.
As the coronavirus pandemic shut down many industrial sectors and supply chains around the world, many Cubans have turned to urban gardening to fight food insecurity. Reporter Luis Criollo has the story.
Reynaldo Chavez is a retired Cuban who has dedicated the past 10 years to developing an organic garden next to his home in an urban Havana neighborhood.
This garden provides us with food, both for my family and also for the community, because I sell part of the yield.
Cuban authorities have called on cooperative state and private farms to produce more food and turn idle city spaces into productive urban gardens. Omar Robles is a construction worker who uses his free time to work in his garden, a once vacant plot in his own backyard.
Here I grow plantain, bananas, root vegetables and fruits. I expect to introduce some poultry as well, all for my family and some neighbors in my community.
Cuba imports most of its food from abroad, as domestic production falls far short of meeting the island's demand. And while COVID-19 has put a further strain on the Cuban economy, so have tougher sanctions imposed by the U.S. Trump administration, limiting major sources of Cuban revenue. Economists say that the Cuban government could still do more to spur current production.
If we want to see larger food production, cooperatives and private farmers should get better pay from the state for what they produce, and also be able to purchase their own production means. And this is not about bringing in capitalism at all.
Cuba first launched its island-wide urban agricultural system more than 25 years ago after much of its food supply was lost amid the collapse of the Soviet Union. Last year, more than 1 million tons of produce were harvested across some 6,500 hectares of dedicated land. The increase of the local agricultural production, both in small and large plots of land, is now crucial to guarantee food availability amidst the current food shortage. In his garden, Chavez grows leafy greens, fruits, root vegetables, and medicinal herbs, all in high demand.
Amid our country's economic problems and food shortage, I'm very happy to make at least a small contribution to the people in the capital city.
A small but significant contribution that, multiplied by similar efforts across the island, could bring substantial benefit to the wider Cuban population.
Up next, sports. African Table Tennis Federation postpones 2 major championship events. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News in Sport. 20 Nigerian Women's Football League clubs will benefit from FIFA's Solidarity Fund meant for teams who helped develop players that represented their countries at the 2019 Women's World Cup in France. FIFA said in a statement, $100,000 to $94,000 will be shared among the 20 eligible Nigerian teams. Rivers Angels, FC Robo, Bayelsa Queens will receive payments for releasing players for the tournament, while 17 other clubs will be paid for their role in training and developing players who featured for the Super Falcons at last year's tournament in France. African Table Tennis Federation has postponed the 2020 ITTF Africa Senior Championships and WTTC qualification to 2021 as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. The African Table Tennis body also postponed the 2020 ITTF Africa Youth Juniors Championship to next year. The Africa Senior Championships was scheduled for Cameroon in October, but the African Youth Juniors Championship slated for Madagascar in April. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.